Here's a video game proposal. The Million Man Raid. Imagine you're playing a game that's similar to The Witcher, maybe with a friend, and imagine that at points in time a giant creature pops up that you can see in the distance that's not just popping up for you while you're playing, but also for everyone else who's playing as well. So you all rush to this creature and there's this haze around it, and as you're all rushing through the haze, the game is matchmaking you into 40-man raids who are going to fight the creature. Then you fight it, but while the creature is being fought, all the footage is being recorded into the cloud. Once the battle's over, the game comes up with some kind of intelligent editing system that delivers everybody who fought the creature a personalized, edited video of their participation in the raid. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the ambitious Xbox One exclusive game that Microsoft proposed to Obsidian before its unceremonious cancellation. This game was Stormlands, codenamed North Carolina, which would never see the light of day. The following information comes from Eurogamer, who, after talking to various Obsidian employees and developers, learned all about Stormlands' history. One Obsidian member, Vice President of Development Chris Parker, described Microsoft's approach as follows. Microsoft's ambition was to do a lot of things and do it very new. Nothing that was standard or typically accepted in video games should be taken as acceptable. It was always try to get it up to the next level, try and figure out something different or some new way to approach it or put a different spin on it. Every feature it was, how do we change this feature to make it better than it has ever been before? So invested was Microsoft on this idea that they were thinking long-term in a fashion that's reminiscent to Destiny's 10-year plan. Obsidian co-owner and CEO Fergus Urquhart explained they wanted to invest in a developer and IP over the long term. That deal was the largest contract we signed. Now, to learn the full history of Stormlands' development and its eventual cancellation, we must rewind the clock all the way back to 2006. By then, Obsidian was already sitting on this idea of a fantasy action-adventure role-playing game titled Defiance at the time, and it would be 5 long years before they would finally have a chance to pitch it to Microsoft in 2011. Unfortunately, their initial pitch left Microsoft apprehensive, as they found the game to be a little tropish and standard in its current state, hoping that Obsidian would be able to reinvent the wheel a little bit. Sensing a big opportunity, Obsidian went back to the drawing board and decided to go all out with their next pitch, even building a demo of the game along the way. Thus, what started as Defiance eventually became the more dramatic Stormlands, a game set in a world of crazy storms that factored into the magic you used. Obsidian went into the pitch with no expectations of being signed, but things started looking up when they realized that Microsoft, during the pitch, was asking a lot of questions about the game. All signs seemed to be pointing to a long-standing partnership between the two companies over this brand new IP. The game that Obsidian was now building was a third-person action role-playing game with combat akin to The Witcher, except Stormlands would feature companions. At one point during Eurogamer's recent visit to Obsidian, the studio was kind enough to actually showcase these demos of Stormlands that were originally pitched to Microsoft, which were running on the same game engine used to make the Obsidian game Dungeon Siege 3. Here's a screenshot of Stormlands that Eurogamer released to give you an idea of what the game looked like back in 2011. Not bad for its time, or even for today if I do say so myself. Eurogamer's article described what they saw as follows. There is a bruised peach tone to the otherworldly sky, which rumbles and crackles with storms while a haunting kind of Arabian music moans in the background. It reminds me immediately of Assassin's Creed or Prince of Persia, with the main character, a man, wrapped in similar styled clothes, a cloak slung over one shoulder. There is a brooding atmosphere, helped no end by the bodies a storm has entombed in the rocky mountainside around us. We eventually come across a female character who was to be one of your companions. She takes her facial armor off before talking to us, which is a nice touch. It bugs me in other RPGs when characters waffle away like noisy, bobbling helmets. A classic dialogue screen of choices appears and the characters interact, fully voiced. On the horizon is a kind of castle we're aiming for, and from which, by the demo's culmination, a huge enemy erupts. That was the pitch that got us the project, says Urquhart as it ends. He loads a Stormlands development milestone video on his screen afterwards, which revolves around combat and is narrated by one of the Stormlands team. This appears in gray box form, so there are no textures, only a smooth gray skin coating everything: characters, enemies, and terrain. In this video, I see the character rolling to evade attacks, as in The Witcher, and teleporting short distances, as Ciri does in The Witcher 3. I also see a variety of acrobatic attacks used against a variety of enemies, from beastmen to wraiths. Crucially, I see companion moves too, special attacks you can trigger allies to perform. It would always be you and one other on a level. These companions and the special partner moves were to be a fundamental cornerstone of the Stormlands experience. Yeah, sounds pretty cool, right? So what went wrong? Apparently there was a discrepancy between Microsoft's goals and ambitions with this game versus what Obsidian could realistically achieve with the technology and time frame that they had. One moment they were making a third-person action-adventure fantasy role-playing game with companions, and the next thing they knew, they were being asked to bring to life this million-man raid idea. Now, Obsidian knew that Microsoft wasn't being literal with this million-man raid idea. This was just them shooting for the stars so Obsidian could get as close to them as possible. Eurogamer's article described it as being akin to how the Walkman was the result of Sony's boss telling his inventors that he wanted a tape player that was the size of a deck of playing cards. So yeah, Microsoft wasn't being literal, but they still had high hopes and ambitions for what they intended to be an incredible Xbox One launch title. At one point in the game's development, Microsoft decided that perhaps the best course of action was to simply throw more resources into the game's development, thinking that the game just needs to be bigger and that Obsidian needs more people prototyping all of these crazy ideas. But from Obsidian's point of view, this was a terrible plan, as more people doesn't always equate to faster development. Too many cooks in the kitchen can result in more complications, more people walking down the wrong path, and a loss of direction. Fergus Urquhart expressed to Eurogamer that he wished he had taken the initiative and flown out to Seattle to meet Don Matrick and everyone else at Microsoft to find a common ground between Microsoft's goals, Obsidian's challenges, and what's realistically possible with the current technology and time frame. But he didn't do that, and Urquhart believes that this might have contributed to Stormlands' eventual cancellation. Thus, only a year after their initial 2011 pitch, on March 2012, Urquhart finally got the call from Microsoft telling them that Stormlands had been cancelled. The following day, Fergus Urquhart had no choice but to gather everyone he would have to lay off as a result of the game's cancellation and relay the bad news. It was a grim day for everyone at Obsidian, but the next day, the studio bounced back running as they assigned key people to put together numerous pitches and find new work fast. It's also worth noting that at the time, Obsidian was working on South Park: The Stick of Truth, but the game's future was uncertain then because its original publisher, THQ, was heading into a collision course with bankruptcy. This was all before Ubisoft saved the project by acquiring the rights in early 2013, eventually resulting in the game's critically and commercially successful launch on March 4th, 2014. Long story short, 2012 was all around a turbulent part of Obsidian's long history, and the cancellation of Stormlands was a major contributor to that. They did eventually try to use the remnants of Stormlands to create a new pitch for a game called Fallen, set in an even darker world. But alas, in the end, nobody picked it up. As Urquhart put it, it was a challenge to repitch a game that had now been cancelled. It makes sense. Why pick up a game that another publisher cancelled? Despite all this, Obsidian remained persistent. What started out as Defiance and then turned into Stormlands and then repitched into Fallen was eventually salvaged into an isometric fantasy RPG game that Paradox Interactive published called Tyranny, which launched on November 10th, 2016 to positive reviews. For those who don't know, Paradox Interactive is also the publisher of Obsidian's critically acclaimed Pillars of Eternity. So yeah, in the end, at the very least, not all of the work that went into Stormlands went to waste. Fast forward to present day, and now Obsidian seems to be doing pretty well for themselves, with the upcoming Pillars of Eternity 2 in the works, alongside an even bigger, secret new project. Furthermore, according to Eurogamer's article, whatever bridges were burned between Obsidian and Microsoft seem repaired, as Urquhart maintains contact with them. So all in all, despite a tumultuous journey, Obsidian is still standing tall and strong. and we can only hope that they stay that way for many years to come. Now, it's great that Obsidian and Microsoft are still in contact and all, but a part of me can't help but wonder, what the fuck, Microsoft? Are they allergic to awesome-looking, compelling exclusive games for their platforms, or what is going on here? Keep in mind that this isn't the first time something like this happened. You may recall that back in January 2017, Microsoft announced the cancellation of Platinum Games' Xbox One and Windows exclusive Scalebound. The cancellation came as a shock to many because not only did the game look great, it had already been in development for 3 to 4 years. And much like what Obsidian went through after Stormlands' cancellation, Scalebound's cancellation put Platinum in a very precarious position, both creatively and financially. Things were so bad for Platinum, in fact, that following the critical and commercial success of Nier Automata earlier this year, Platinum founder Hideki Kamiya thanked game director Yoko Taro for practically saving the studio, stating, "To say that Yoko-san saved Platinum would not be an exaggeration. I cannot thank him enough." So this is twice now that Microsoft has compromised a talented studio and its employees by preemptively canceling what could have yielded a fruitful partnership. This is twice now that Microsoft has rejected some really great-looking games that may have added some much-needed fuel to Xbox One's meager library of exclusives. And look, I'm sure this kind of stuff happens all the time. Developers pitch a game to a publisher, they see where it goes, and if it doesn't work out, they part ways. But Microsoft seems to have a habit of making developers spend a significant amount of time and resources into a project before throwing them over the curb, thereby financially screwing over studios and resulting in lost jobs. This is especially frustrating when you consider that we aren't just talking about some crappy games being made by some unknown entity. These were titles being made by two of the most acclaimed game developers in their respective fields: Obsidian, the masters of RPGs, and Platinum, the masters of action games. I'm just thinking to myself, what possible reason could Microsoft have had for canceling these? What posed such a risk that made them take such drastic measures? Is it because these games didn't meet some grand standard of their ambitious ideas to reinvent the wheel or something? If so, to them I say that games don't always have to revolutionize the formula to be awesome. Games just have to be good, polished, compelling, and unique in their own right, which is exactly what both Stormlands and Scalebound could have been. It just boggles my mind. You've got a company that could use any compelling exclusives they could get their hands on. They got two of the most renowned video game studios to make some, and their response was, nah, I just don't get it. It doesn't do them any favors, and they're harming some really talented game developers and studios along the way. Everybody loses. At the very least, I'm glad that Obsidian and Platinum managed to overcome their dire circumstances. No thanks to Microsoft. These two studios are underrated treasures of the video game industry, and they're just too valuable to lose, especially nowadays. Here's hoping that one day somebody picks up Obsidian's original Stormlands concept and Platinum's Scalebound so that they may one day see the light of day, because from where I'm sitting, they both seem like great losses. Anyway, there you go, folks, the story of Stormlands, the Xbox One exclusive Obsidian RPG that Microsoft canceled. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this video useful or found it interesting, and if you enjoy my content, I hope you'll consider supporting me on Patreon to help our community remain independent from third-party sponsorship and corporate interference. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!